Hi, Dr. Tara Boston-Kipper here, and you are listening to the Culture Focus Practice podcast. Thank you for being here with me. Thank you for joining me. Today marks my favorite type of episode, the owner's room. The focus is slowing down. And this is the first time in the entirety of this podcast that I have a guest on. Hey. Okay, so joining me is Dr. Jeremy Sharp, who I met randomly from Facebook, and we just hit it off. Like, met, talk shop, hit it off. So it's just awesome that he's here with me. And let me just tell you real quick about him. So, licensed psychologist, director at the Colorado Center for Assessment, which is a multi-million-dollar private practice. There is a focus on psychological and neuropsych evals with kids and adolescents that was founded in 2009. And it was right-sized about a year ago, which we're going to talk about today as part of the slowing down conversation. He's also, as you very well may know, the host of the Testing Psychologist podcast and also a consultant for clinicians. I feel like those things go hand in hand, like podcasting and consulting. So he does a lot of private practice coaching for psychologists and other mental health professionals who want to start or grow assessment services in their practices. Lastly, most importantly, not really, but lastly, in 2020, he partnered with a software developer to co-found Reverb, which is an AI report writing platform for testing psychologists. And this helps with writing faster and better reports. And I think it goes without saying, but getting their time back for what matters most. So really awesome. Jeremy rocks. I'm super happy he's here. Welcome, Jeremy. I'm glad to have you here. Thank you for being here with me.
Yeah. I'm excited to be here and honored to be the first guest. That's
The first
incredible. I've had you
one, I
lined me up.
know.
My gosh, a little
Yeah,
dressed
this
up.
is exciting. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so as you all may know or not know, this is the owner's room. So this is a space where we don't have any perfect answers and none of this is scripted. And we basically just get real about what it's like to lead a practice. So this episode is all about emotional whiplash of choosing to slow down or related to choosing to slow down. So basically, when you finally pause and then you immediately question, what the fuck am I doing? Like, what have I done? Why am I not doing more? Why am I not working more or harder or later or longer or fill in the blank? So we are basically going to unpack the mental noise just by virtue of having a conversation about things and talk about what it takes to hold stillness without losing your center. Before we go further, hit subscribe. The more you like this, the more you subscribe, I should say, if it resonates with you, the more it reaches like-minded people who also need the same message. So thank you in advance. Let's do it. The agenda item, we have 2 items on the agenda. One is that we're going to go through a series of questions we have not practiced. 2, we're going to do a little scenario. And so we'll do a real life scenario and then talk through maybe how we might handle this if it came up. So boom. You ready, Jeremy?
Let's do it.
Let's do it. Okay. Because you are the guest, I'm going to ask questions and I'll probably have you talk first, but then we'll just go from there.
Yeah. Great.
All right. Okay. Question number 1. What does falling behind, in quotes, actually mean to you? And is it true?
Yes. These questions seem so simple when I read them before, and now all of a sudden it's complicated. Yeah.
Yeah.
What does falling behind mean to me? To me, there's a couple components of falling behind. So there's sort of big picture falling behind of, hey, I'm not doing enough in terms of visioning for the business. I'm not making big plans. I don't have any like grand projects in the works or anything like that. So sort of maybe you call it complacency around leading. But then there's also the day-to-day falling behind for me, which is too many emails in the inbox and not responding to people on time. And, maybe I'm not doing things that I said I was going to do by a certain date or whatever it may be.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's all of that. And I don't know if that's, if the practical pieces like that are able to be separated from the emotional piece, but there's also an emotional component of just like feeling behind and like I'm just not doing enough somehow. So it's all those things for me. What about you?
Yeah, you know what? There's 2 thoughts that I have. As you said that, I think that enoughness, I don't know if that's like an entrepreneurial thing or like a
Mhm.
certain type of person thing, but I absolutely relate to that sense of like, ooh, this, I haven't done enough. Like, just enoughness in general. I question if I'm doing enough for my team, if I, not usually related to my own effort or maybe like my own work, unless I, let's say, have a 3-day stretch where I'm like busy and I can't get any work done. I start to get like this pent up energy. Like I need an output, like I need something to focus on to, chew on. So
Hmm.
but I do think there's something about like the enoughness piece. But there was something else that came up for me as you were talking related to like the inbox and the emails. I think it was
Hmm.
Cal Newport. I think you know that I love Cal Newport. If you don't,
Hmm.
yeah, I love Cal Newport. And maybe in Deep Work, he wrote about this guy. I don't remember the name, or his name, excuse me. He wrote about this guy who maybe he was some sort of like scientist, like a physicist or something. He is just intentionally inept. Like he's like, no, I'm really bad at committees. I shouldn't be on this one. He like on purpose is
Oh, hmm.
quote bad at doing things
Uh-huh.
because he knows the value of spending time thinking and working and producing in terms
Hmm.
of like concepts and content for what he actually wants to do. Like all of these other things take him away from what he is most valuable doing. And it made me think about that with your inbox, where you said sort of like, I need to be responding more. I'm not responding enough in this way. And I feel like the joke at my own practice, I don't even think it's a joke. It's for real, is that my inbox is my bane of my existence. And sometimes that's by design where I will not respond because
Hmm.
I can't do this. Like I have other shit that I need to be doing. Obviously urgent things need to be responded to, so that's a little bit different. But if something's
Yeah.
not urgent, then I'll get back to it, like I'll go later. And I feel like the more I practice that thing, I don't feel as bad now as I used to about it. I'm like,
Hmm.
no, they'll be fine. They can wait a few days.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I think Cal Newport is also the one.
Love
Maybe he
him.
said that you also, I love that guy.
Yeah.
That you train people how to interact with you over email. And if you respond right away, that just tells them you're going to respond right away and they'll
Yeah.
keep emailing you and expect you to respond right away. So
Mhm.
it sounds like you're training people in the right way.
I'm
Yeah.
training
Yeah.
people and then putting the right people, like having people around me where I'm like, this isn't me. Like, boop, go talk to them. Like, this
Yes.
isn't it.
Yes.
Mhm.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah. Mhm.
I'm sort of jumping. I think maybe, I don't actually know if I am jumping. Maybe this is the point of the structure is we're going to go where it goes. But it makes me think about your right sizing and how I can say now, well, I have an integrator and I have a DCO and I have a marketing director. And so anybody who comes to me with anything that falls in their camp, I'm immediately going to kick that can over. Like, this does not belong to me. But
Mhm.
if you right sized, what roles did you get rid of,
Mhm.
if any? And then also, like, did that impact the way you show up in your work life, if that makes sense? Like, in terms
Mhm.
of your availability to others, and then also maybe
Mhm.
that the notion of like falling behind. Like, I think I'm asking a question. There's a
Oh yeah,
question in there
yeah.
somewhere, right?
There's definitely stuff to respond to. So I'll
Okay.
go, yeah, I'll go with
Give
that.
me,
Yeah.
yeah, cool.
Yeah. So we went from, just for folks who don't know, which is probably a lot of folks, that yeah, peaked at probably 40 plus employees and practitioners and all that. And so we had like kind of a 3-tier leadership team. I was the visionary, we
Yeah.
had our second, like our kind of directors level. And then we called them coordinators, underneath the directors and then supervisors. So yeah, I mean, there was a lot of leadership in place before this right sizing, which happened
Mhm.
about a year ago. And I got rid of all that. So now I'm our director and that's it.
That's
So I'm the director and then everyone just works, everyone's just
yeah.
like a team member. And we still have clinical supervisors and we have one person who is, we call it, her title is coordinator, but she does a little bit more sort of like higher level stuff.
Mhm.
But yeah, I got rid of a lot of that. And, it's been interesting. On the whole, I think it's been a really good thing, but there was a trade-off for sure, which I kind of
Mhm.
made peace with around I do more tasks now. Like I had
Mhm.
to absorb some of those roles that were
Yeah.
occupied by leadership,
Yeah.
but if I still feel like I'm working less and with a lot less stress for sure. So yeah, I took back some of those tasks, like some of the integrator tasks for sure.
Mhm.
A little bit of supervision, so I'm more available to my team now than I was,
Mhm.
before the right sizing. But it also adds a little bit more, and it's where I get
Yeah.
nervous sometimes.
For not getting things done or for like
Exactly.
falling behind? I mean, logistically falling behind, I guess.
hmm I don't know. Yeah, I
Yeah.
don't know if you struggle with this. I definitely struggle with this. Like, I want to be the one to help people and like be useful and like solve people's problems and stuff like
Mhm.
that. And so it's like a
Mhm.
constant trap slash awareness that I have to be like, should I actually be doing this, or am I just doing this so I will be like useful and thereby valuable to someone, you know?
Oh my gosh. Yep. Yeah. All the time. I think like, is this actually valuable for other? Is this actually, am I being of service? Am I being useful? Am I, um, I don't, is this what ends up happening for you? And I'm asking, because this is typically it's not foot in mouth, but it's probably cart before horse. It's the shit that I always end up doing to myself, where I step in early or I sort of inject myself. And then by nature of stepping in, it's almost like I've put I'm like then a shelf that exists, and then people start stacking shit on top. I'm like, oh, now I'm carrying all of this stuff where I shouldn't even be in this room. Like this shelf doesn't belong with this decor. Like, go, what are you doing, Tara? But I end up making myself like I'm part of this function all of a sudden where why? Because I just wanted to be like, I can help. No, bitch, no, you shouldn't help. Get out. Get out.
Mhm.
Stay out. I'm just kidding to
Right.
myself. So is that the thing you're talking about, or does yours look different?
Yeah, yeah. No, it's putting myself into places that I really shouldn't be doing things, where I get easily offloaded to our office manager or our scheduling team or something like that. But I just insist on having some amount of involvement and, I'll jump in and, oh, I can take care of that.
Mhm.
And, that doesn't make sense. But I do have to feel useful, I think, because then it gets back to one of our other questions, which is like feeling
Mhm.
agitated when I'm not doing something. And so
Mhm.
it's be a
Yeah.
defense against
Yeah.
stillness,
Something. The
which is
agitation.
Mhm, mhm.
Okay, so that's actually a good segue into question two, I think, which is what emotions do you associate with slowing down?
Oh gosh. Yeah. I mean, we used the term agitation a minute ago, and that feels pretty relevant. Yeah. I mean, I do feel agitated, restless, can be frustrating at times. Uh, you know, there's kind of two sides to it though. Like initially, stillness maybe feels pretty good, like maybe for I don't know, a couple hours or maybe a day, something like that. But then it gets a little uncomfortable or a lot uncomfortable, and I have to, yeah. Then uh, it's really tough. It's really tough to sit with all of that and just feel
Mm.
bored. Let me tell you, can I tell you a little story though?
Yeah,
Just as
yeah.
a side note, and then we'll see if this relates at all. But so this was 18 months ago at this point. So December of 2023, I decided to like purposefully go away for 4 or 5 days. And I promised myself that I would not do any work whatsoever. It was all just to kind of reflect on what's going on in the practice. What do we need? This is pre right sizing, but it was a big part of
Mhm.
that whole process. So, I mean, I spent 4 or 5 days by myself, not working, which is, I've never done that.
Mm.
I have never done that. Yeah. Like what just happened for you when I said that?
Yeah, holy shit. I'm like, oh God, that's why I go away to work. Like, so I can work unencumbered and uninhibited and just follow whatever work whim I have. So the idea of going away and not like, oh, that would be really difficult to do. Like
It was
really, really
really,
hard to do.
it was
Yeah.
brutal. It was brutal. And the whole
Yeah.
point, it wasn't like a meditation retreat, obviously,
Yeah.
but it was something, it was kind of like that. But so I have, I took notes or like kind of journaled most of the time. And
Yeah.
it was all just like, this is really hard. I want to be doing things. I feel useless. This is a waste of time. Like, it was
Mm.
startling to see like all the negative, like everything that came with that. Um, and ultimately it was great. I think it was helpful, but I think it ties into what we're
Mhm.
talking about. So those are the feelings that come up when I think about stillness.
That is so funny. Yeah. Yeah. Oh my gosh. This is where I start to get like be curious about a like trait and personality and like what is that thing? Like obviously, you're sort of mentioning like I want to, the feeling useful and I think you mentioned previously on outside conversations, but about productivity, which probably is not a shock related to like feeling useful and being of value. Feels like they're all like it's like a there's a latent variable there. They're all sort of like circling around the same thing. What is that thing? Is there something about diligence within conscientiousness? Is there something about um
Mhm.
I don't know. Like it just makes me wonder like I'm just curious about what is that thing? And if there wasn't work, for example, would there be another outlet? And then for someone like you, or let's say we both relatively fall in that camp, what how do you do something like benefit from slowing down and still, you know, like acknowledge that part of you is never going to feel comfortable in that space, even if it's beneficial. Like it doesn't ever physiologically match with your internal state. You know what I'm saying?
Oh
Like
my gosh.
it's such a weird mix. Like it's such a weird sort of conundrum to be in.
Mhm, mhm. I mean, we could go any number of directions with
Oh,
that. I mean, so personality wise, I mean, what is that? Person for me, I know there's a mix of neuroticism and conscientiousness that
ooh. Mhm.
like maybe play a role.
Yeah.
Because I feel like I'm like always having to like just get things done for it's a lot of like for people,
Mhm.
it's like tasks for people. Um, but then, gosh, at the risk of being too much of a psychologist, I mean, it
Oh,
all goes back to family of origin, right?
yeah,
Like
yeah.
I
Uh-huh.
think, that was definitely how I was sort of recognized within my family growing up was like being helpful. And
Yeah.
there wasn't a lot of resting. There was always something to do. I grew up with a kind of like a chronically ill parent, who
Mhm.
required, I guess, a lot of support, and so there was no there was no resting. And
Mhm.
so that's probably playing into it. And,
Mhm.
there's a
Mhm.
lot going on there. But yeah, it's all
Yeah.
to me like value and self-worth and that kind of stuff. Like,
Yeah.
when we get right down to it, I'm probably like, if I'm not being productive or like getting things done, then what value am I bringing to anything?
Yeah, that's so wild. Yeah, especially again, like in the context of this episode in particular, sort of this notion of slowing down. This is not a question for right now, I don't think, but it sort of makes me think about when something like slowing down, for example, pushes directly up against like something like either a core wound or maybe a core sort of relatively static trait, or some sort of trauma or like what do you do? There's this weird again, because you think, okay, well, slowing down has benefits. And potentially, like you're saying 18 months ago, you had this 4 or 5 day not meditative retreat, but like self-imposed retreat where you didn't allow yourself to work. And my question in my head is one of the questions as you were talking was like, oh, I wonder if that's a huge part of the decision to right size or if the right sizing realization maybe came from that stillness, came from not allowing yourself to really work. Like you're just sort of sitting and potentially thinking. And then 6 months later, now you're making this big shift. Like you're making a huge shift that
Mhm.
influences a bunch of other people, but is what is best for you and the remaining people at the group. And so, yeah, I think maybe it sort of makes me wonder, okay, if you hadn't done that thing, would you still be with a 40-person team, for example? Would you have realized at that juncture that you needed to right size? Like this is what was best. Or do
Mhm.
you, like hypothetically it would have happened at some point in the future, but do you think it helped? Do you know what I mean? Do you think it helped that
Mhm.
come to fruition or helped clarify that for you to be able to sit in that stillness?
Yeah, yeah, for sure. For sure. It definitely clarified it and accelerated it. Yeah. I mean, I think before that, I had maybe considered the possibility of right sizing, but
Mhm.
doing that, that time away really helped to clarify that and
Mhm.
made it more real. And I was able to think through what it might look like and just
Yeah.
recognize, yeah, what it was like to not feel um, completely overwhelmed and
Yeah,
stressed out.
goodness gracious. Yeah. Okay, so
Sure.
then how about this? Um, I have another question, and I
Mhm.
think this is a little bit I think it's related to what you just were saying, but whose expectations are you carrying when you can't let yourself pause? It feels like an extension of what we're just talking about. I think that's where I'm like, "Ooh, I wanna ask this. Let's go here."
Yeah, 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 definitely. It's a tough one because I don't know that there are explicit expectations. I do think it is tied up a lot into kind of family of origin stuff, right?
Mhm.
So I don't know. We're like going deep on this podcast, but it's I think that's a big part of it. Now, I didn't grow
Yeah.
up with like explicit expectations from my
Yeah.
parents necessarily. They weren't like, you have to get straight A's or you have to be super, you know, productive or, they definitely weren't like tiger parents or anything like that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um, but the implicit expectation was like you're available at all times, like for family stuff. We need you
Got
to
it.
like take on a lot of responsibility. We need, that's just like the role that
Mhm.
was kind of needed. Um, and so then I got wrapped up in, yeah, I think maybe my own expectations along the
Mhm.
way of like, I have to, maybe this as a business owner, it's like once you reach, you just keep stepping up and up and up. And if there's
Mhm.
not another up, it, can feel kind of disappointing or disconcerting.
Oh, yeah. Disconcerting, yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
There's nothing there, like, so it has to be created or
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And then the last component is probably the team, eventually, like as the
Mhm.
practice grew, there got to be, I felt like there were expectations from the team, not that anyone had mentioned. And, in fact, I would ask my team, like, do y'all think I'm lazy? Like, is it
Oh my
okay?
gosh.
Like, do you, like, I feel like I'm not doing anything. Is that, and they would always be
Uh-huh.
like, what are you talking about?
Uh-huh.
That's an insane person's statement. Like, yeah. So then there was like expectations from the team that were totally unfounded. So I
Mhm.
don't know. It's a little bit of all that
Mhm.
wrapped up. And what about for you?
It's such a mind fuck. Yeah, it's so funny. You saying that, I'm thinking about our last, because we operate on EOS, and for
Mhm.
those listening, Jeremy's very familiar. I think to an extent, there's still EOS that lives in your practice. If
Oh
not,
yeah.
it's like full fledged. Yeah. Um, Maybe it was at our last quarterly, so it would have been, God, what month are we in? It would have been January-ish. We're kicking
Mhm.
off, the 2-day. And I think I said something about, "Is this enough? Like, are we doing enough? Is this good for this year? Like, this one-year plan, really? Is that enough?" And both my integrator and my DCO were all like, "Yeah, yes, yep, Tara, this is good. Like, no, don't take on any more. Just stop. Just stop. Get some help," I think my perception of enough is just totally fucked. I don't
Yeah.
have any concept of I genuinely don't. Like, I have no concept of what's too much. So I'm like, "We can
Mhm.
do that. That's easy. We can do that. We can
Right.
get that thing done."
Right.
Okay, like, yeah.
My wife and I talk about this fairly frequently. She's also a therapist and an entrepreneur. She has
Yeah,
a
yeah.
practice and podcast and all this stuff. So we have a totally skewed perspective, but sometimes we're like, are there, what are normal people like? Like, are there people out there who just go to work and like work for 6 or 8 hours
Yeah.
a day and then come
Yeah.
home and are like, cool, let's relax and
Yeah. Let's
I'm
hang
pretty
out.
content. Does that happen?
There's this, comedian, Tim Dillon. I don't know how I know this, but I remember, like, listening to a clip of him. He was, like, talking about how your average person, they're gonna work 9 to 5, they're gonna get off. they're going to go to Buc-ee's, buy a 6-pack of beer, go home and hang out for the weekend. And it was sort of like this, um, oh my gosh, that is such a crazy concept to me. Like the idea that a lot of people, I think that a lot of people do feel comfortable doing that, just sort of chilling and and not that they're settling in terms of like, you need to reach harder, but like literally feeling internally settled, feeling
Mm,
comfortable with either slower movement or stillness or
mm,
not like intense pursuit of something and intense, whether like emotionally intense or just like logistically, physically, like, running after something intense. I feel like I sprint at life and I'm like
mm,
gorging myself in the process while I'm sprinting, like on everything I can get my hands on, which is a weird problem to have because it's also incredible, but not always sustainable. And so, yeah, I do not think that you're probably the norm. I do not think that I'm probably the norm either. Yeah, no shade and judgment also at people who I fucking wish I could. I wish I could just be fine with a 9 to 5, like working a normal, quote, normal job. And I wish I could. I don't have it in me.
same. Same.
Yeah, doesn't
Yeah.
exist.
So I don't know if I checked in with you about, yeah, where that's coming from, like personality stuff or some other
Yeah.
influences. What do you think?
Yeah, this is where for me, I feel like I'm not a real therapist sometimes because there's so many therapists. I would say even like the education we get is um social pressures are like the most, I would say it seems like they are more important than, let's just say, like biological or genetic tendencies. I don't know if I agree with that. I think that there's obviously social pressures that influence everything about us in terms of even the way I think some of our phenotypes, some of our gene expression, which is fucking incredible. But I feel like it's inside of me. Like I've never been sort of pressured to move. I just as a child, my mom will tell the story where it's like kindergarten, my first day of kindergarten. I'm getting dropped off by the preschool van because I was at kinder care and kinder care is where I went. And I get dropped off and I'm like, I literally just take off sprinting out of the bus. And Miss Debbie was like, Tara, do you know where you're going? And I like over my shoulder yelled back, no. And I just kept running. That has like, how do you like what social pressure is getting this 5-year-old to like sprint in the direction of something without having any concept of what is happening or where she's going? That's just me in a nutshell, like the epitome of me, like growing up, constantly busy, constantly doing something. And it didn't ever feel like too much. I never felt like I need to stop, I need to slow down. I just, I like being busy. I like doing things that I enjoy doing, of course. It will reach a fever pitch. It will reach a threshold where it's like, oh, no, 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 this is too much. And I had to learn to recognize that threshold and then also realize how and where to scale it back. But I don't know. I don't feel like it's social for me at all. I feel like that's maybe a cop out answer. And again, I'm always worried about saying something like that where I don't know if it's social because I feel like sort of a social pariah for voicing that out loud. So is that the most
Yeah,
non-answer I've ever given? Did I answer that question back?
I think I'll go with it. I think it's fine. I think
Okay.
it's still
Okay,
is.
good.
No, I'm
Thank
with you.
you.
I think there's
Good.
something with that. I think there's an innate, yeah, we come out with something. We come out of the womb with
Same.
something. I
Mhm.
know that's true for my kid. I mean, my kids have been different from day one, and
Wild.
I mean, you can make arguments that we raise them differently, but it's not that different, I don't think.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
they're incredibly different personalities. So
Yeah.
there's something for biological.
That's gotta be something. Yeah. Yeah. Maybe not entirely biological determinism, but like, I'm not a genetic essentialist. I'm not that, but I'm also
Yeah.
not a total like social conformity or social pressures influence everything. It's like if I could make my child do anything, I would love to. Like I wish I had control. Okay, abrupt shift to another question. Which one? I'm going to read these, but I feel like we've kind of talked about them. What part of your identity feels most threatened by rest? Sort of the
Mm,
flip side of the coin of like we feel compelled to do things, but is that the same as like there's a part of you that feels threatened by the idea of rest? Do you know what I mean?
mhm, mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think there's, I'm trying to go back to like a consistent identity. I think I have always had some identity as an achiever for sure. I
Mhm.
mean, like I said earlier, my parents never like pressured me to get good grades, but I always did. And I loved it. And that was a big identity for a long time.
Mhm.
So, you know, if anything, that's what jumps to mind right away is you know, if I'm being still, like, what am I achieving? And of course, the answer is like, well, you don't need to always be achieving. But
Mhm.
you know, that's the identity to me that feels threatened the most. And then, of course, like right underneath that is like, well, if you're not achieving, then how are you valuable to anybody
Yeah.
or
Oh my
anything?
gosh.
And so, you know,
Yeah.
those run in tandem. But as far as
Mhm.
identities go, I think, yeah, the achiever is pretty
Is
pretty
it
high
the
up there. Yeah.
Are you I forget, are
Yeah.
you you're type 3 Enneagram?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I feel like I like the Enneagram. I think it's fun, but it's not efficacious. Like it's fun. It's cool. Yeah, like
I'm so
it's
yeah, I'm glad to hear you say it.
yeah, I mean, I feel
It's not
man, that's one of those
there's no research behind
there's
it.
no reason.
There's no research. Sorry, everybody. I'm
Yeah.
sorry. There's no
Yeah.
research behind the Enneagram, but it is
Yep.
fun.
It is still fun. It's still fun. I still will ask people like, "Are you a 3?" I'll like I still,
Mhm.
it's yeah. So, again, I feel like now we made ourselves both social pariahs. You've joined the club,
Yeah.
the social pariah. Yeah. So achievement based for you. That's the identity that feels most
Achievements.
threatened. Yeah.
Mhm. But it's gotten complicated over time too, because like the more you achieve, I feel like more has kind of come along with that, you know,
Yeah.
where like, it was a big part, that right sizing was really, really hard from an identity perspective, you know,
Mhm.
because I had become kind of known in our community as like,
Yeah.
"Hey, this person with this large practice, and wow, like, you're doing all this, you know, look at everything that you built," and all that. I don't know what the identity for that is, but, it was definitely threatened. Like, I had to wrestle with that a lot. Like, what are people gonna think of me? Like, I'm not gonna be
Yeah.
special anymore. Like, who nobody's gonna care, you know?
Yeah.
It's all just ego stuff. But it was real, you know, like you're gonna
Mhm.
be a failure. People are gonna say, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, wow, that is so bringing something up for me. I but even before that, my thought is like, holy shit, that is a huge thinking of like being useful, being valuable to others, the achievement sort of identity piece. I didn't even think about how difficult it must have been to actively step away and almost, I think, cut your practice in half.
Mhm.
That like, wow, I feel like it's sort of hitting me in a different way hearing you say that. That is a huge like a huge shift. That's a huge shift.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Sure.
especially with those factors. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
with those pieces. Mhm.
Mm, yeah. There's something. Well, you know, you're in this community. Like you go to conferences and stuff, and
Yeah.
people are like always like measuring practice sizes, right? You know, like,
Yeah,
oh, how many employees, you know, what's your practice
yeah,
like? And, I mean, there's a lot wrapped up to be like, oh, 40, 45, you know, and now
yeah,
it's like 15, just
yeah, yeah, on
there's a,
purpose. It's like intentionally you have to like give the qualifier on purpose. I chose 15.
hmm
Like this is the number that I want. Yeah, I think I've had people not work with me because I didn't have a big enough practice, which is funny to me because even at my size, like the way the structure, I our infrastructure is so just spot on. So it holds clout. It's like having a PhD, and I know plenty of people with PhDs who are, they're assholes, but that's not very nice to say, even if it is true. And it still holds weight. Like somebody sees PhD or they see MD and it's like, "Oh my god." There's some like
yeah,
weight behind it.
prestige.
Yeah, some prestige. Yeah, yeah. And so I think there is something to be said for like the size of the practice when somebody's actively asking you about things. There's maybe not judgment in a negative way, but some sort of like judgment or assessment of you based on your extension, this extension of you, your group practice that you own and run and the number of people that are a part of it.
Yes.
Yeah, that's
Mm.
interesting. I was trying to think, I don't know what identity, what part of your identity feels most
Mhm.
threatened by rest? I don't know. It's the part of me that likes to sprint and gorge myself on life. I feel like
Mm.
if I don't do that, it will never happen again. I will never sprint again. I will never gorge myself on life
Mm.
if I'm not doing it. Like, it's really hard, that part of me anyway, the whole Oprah thing, like, you can have friends and family and health and career, but not all at once, or like the two burner theory, or is it two or four burner theory? I think the two burner theory. And I'm like, why can't I have all four burners on at once? Like, what's the problem? I never do. I literally can't, but I'm gonna have all four burners on at once. No, bitch, no, you're not. Like, just stop. It's really hard for me to accept the fact that I won't have all four burners on at once, or at least for that part of me. And even if I do, it's almost like it doesn't exist in a month. Like, it's back to four burners. I'm using them all. So I don't know if that's some of like the ADHD stuff for me, sort of this like I've talked with people before about, I feel like I'll build a system, and in my mind, this is why I also need people around me. In my mind, it's like I'm building a sandcastle right next to a shore, but I don't realize that's what I'm doing. I walk away from it and I come back and I sort of see remnants, but I'm like, I don't even remember what this was. And then I build it up again and it basically looks the exact same, but I had to build it again. Like, I have to build it again. It's like once I walk away from something, it almost feels like it loses its shape and form. And so I'll say to myself, "Hey, four burner theory, or two burner. You can only do two things at once." And there's a voice in the back of my mind that's like, "Fuck off! No, you can do more. You can do more. You can do all the things." And I'll say, "Okay, but really, like, you can only do a couple things at once." And let's say I decide to do those couple things, whatever they might be, in a month. I'm having the exact same conversation with myself. So it's almost like I'm building that sandcastle again. Like, oh my gosh, here we go
Mm.
again. Like, let me build this up. Maybe I can do all four. Nope, still can't. So it's like I'm almost like working against myself. I mean, that's just it. Like, I'm this part of me that wants to sprint and gorge myself on life. And then also that part feels threatened for sure. I don't even know what that is. I
Yeah.
feel like,
I was
yeah,
trying to think of an identity for that. Yeah.
almost, I don't know. It doesn't feel like existential. I don't know if I'm okay. So as I'm talking, I'm thinking part of it probably does have something to do with the sandcastle thing. Like, it's hard to hold forms in my mind if they're not in front of me. And so, which fucks up my sense of time. And I already think that time is nonlinear anyway. So my concept of time is just shot, period. And then, it's nonlinear, so it doesn't matter. But
Mm.
then I go back to a thing that I just visited, let's say a week ago, and it feels like it's been 6 years and 1,000 miles, like it's like, oh my God, it's been forever since I've done this thing, but it hasn't been. So this like not having a good concept of time, not holding shape and form in my mind if it's not like in front of my face, and then also wanting to like sprint and gorge, it's like the perfect, perfect. It's like this great combination of things that I I don't know what to do with. Maybe it's like ADHD is part of it. Like, it's just it feels like, right? Like, it's like, maybe some of this is ADHD and then also, a
Yeah.
tendency to want to move.
Yeah. Yeah. Do
Mhm.
you feel like you would be yourself if you were more still, or uh, I don't know, like, is there a version of yourself that can do that? Or, is that kind of, or
Yeah.
is it just kind of built into your
Yeah,
being,
that's funny.
being perpetual? Yeah.
Yeah, I can be still. It works best if I'm by myself. Like, it's hard to be still when my kids are around. And even if my husband or there's like a dog in the space with me, like, any energy immediately sucks half my attention, even if they're quiet. I'm just sort of aware of this other thing. And so when
Mhm.
I'm by myself, especially, I can just sort of breathe and like be. Um, there was a second thought I had though. It was the stillness piece. It also works best when I feel satiated about something. like
Mhm.
concept. Like I've been able to grapple with the concept and like to its full completion. Now I can
Yes.
breathe. So it doesn't feel like I need to achieve this thing. It feels like my brain has trouble letting it. I feel like I'll reference myself sometimes as like a dog with a bone. I'm like trying to get
Mhm.
all the marrow out of this bone. Once it's done, like, all right, I'm good. I can
Yes.
fucking chill. Yeah.
Mhm.
Until I get
Yeah,
excited about bringing it to actual fruition and then, we're off to the races again. So yeah, there's right.
absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I connect with that pretty deeply. Yeah, there's something around like I have to reach some level of I mean, that's a good word for it. Satiation.
Yeah.
Satiety. Yeah. Yeah.
Satiety would be satiety. I don't know.
I don't
I'm
know.
making
I don't
things
know.
up.
I may be making it.
Satiated.
Yeah. Yeah. And then yeah, kind of relax a little bit.
Yep. Especially like the conceptual piece. The tasky stuff makes me agitated, but the conceptual stuff is where I like, then I can feel really satiated from that sort of thing.
Nice. Yes.
Yeah, which is
Yes.
funny. Yeah, because I think you're good with tasky stuff.
Yeah, probably too good. I mean, that's where,
Yeah.
yeah, I talk about or think about false productivity a lot, where I can do
It's funny.
lots of tasks and they may or may not. I mean, I don't think I waste time, but they're not like huge, like big, meaningful tasks. Again, like Cal Newport will talk about knocking out emails and taking care of little things here and there.
It makes me wonder, you're probably one of those people who's really good at both visionary and integrator, like being a combo of the two. Like of the people, you know what I'm saying? Like of the people
Mhm,
to be a V/I combo. And I know Gino Wickman talks about this in Traction at some point where, or maybe it's in Rocket Fuel, where it's a
mhm,
very small percentage of people who do this well. And, he talks about, I think one guy, or he writes about one guy who was both visionary and integrator and just was able to do that for 20 plus years and
mhm.
grow the business and, like do these other things. It would it makes me think that you're probably one of those people then. You're probably somebody who does both well, that you can hold sort of these conceptual bigger visions, whatever that might look like, whatever they might look like, and then also integrate, be the integrator, bring things to completion from a task oriented, tasky place as well as like conceptual.
Mhm, mhm. Yeah, maybe so. Maybe so. I can't say I've really tried, but I can't. I am tasked and sort of oriented and deadline oriented. I mean, yeah, yeah, yeah. I think that's
Yeah.
almost actually. I mean, I'm kind of doing that now in our practice, in a
Yeah.
way, because we don't have an integrator. So,
You're both. Yeah. It's like you literally, like you are both. You are the visionary, but also you're doing integrator type things. Like you're the point person and
mhm.
yeah. Yeah. It's funny.
So,
Okay.
oh,
You want to do the scenario? We've been on for a little while. I think, mostly I'm aware of your own time. I don't want to keep you
mhm,
here forever. We're going to jump.
yeah.
Let's jump to the scenario. All right, folks. So for the scenario, if you have listened before, you already know I'm going to read a scenario and then we're just going to talk about it. So bear with me. You have just wrapped up a major hiring cycle, onboarded 2 new team members, implemented a new process for clinical reviews, and hit your quarterly goals. Whoop, whoop. Everything is working, but now there's quiet. No fires, no chaos, no deadlines. And yet you feel agitated. You start rewriting your to-do list, fixing things that aren't broken, and considering another program to build out. What the hell is going on? That's the question. That really is the question. How would you okay, so maybe there's 2 questions here. What the hell is going on? That could be the first questions, maybe 3 questions. How would you work with someone like this? And then how would you cope if this was you? Like, what would be going on if this was you? Which I think that's the whole point of this, like, episode is that we're talking about this, but let's just bring it home. Real life scenario. This happens. It's you. What's going on?
Mhm, mhm. So the textbook answer versus the real life answer. I think both exist. So, gosh, how would I work with somebody in this space? So, yeah, having the luxury of looking in from the outside is a true luxury. So, I mean, I
Mhm.
think I've gone through this enough and like reflected on this process enough where I could look at someone and say, what's going on here? And then play a little bit of, therapist or coach or whatever, and just point out the process and like what's coming up for you, and what do you need? What's going on? What are you missing? What hole are you trying to fill? Like, is this useful,
Yes.
or is this just an activity, or a pursuit or whatever? Um, that's probably where I would start with folks, right? And objectively, it sounds like everything's great for now, and this person
Mhm.
doesn't necessarily need to be doing anything. Um, so kind of digging into that. Personally, though, yeah, I mean, the textbook answer is like, oh, I'd probably notice this in myself and do some reflection and like talk to people I trust, and get to a better place. Be
Mhm.
content and just sit with it. But what actually happens in real life is I may not channel it immediately into a work thing, but I will channel it somewhere. So I'll be like, oh, maybe I need to run another marathon. Let me
Yeah.
sign up for a marathon and put a training plan in place so that I can follow like week
Uh-huh.
by week and work towards something. Or maybe there's a house project. Let me look and see what that could. So I will channel that energy somewhere in most cases, or whatever. Maybe I'll research something in detail. I'm kind of like ashamed to admit that in another life, I feel like I could be a personal shopper. Like I do so much online research for stuff that I buy. So I would like go research refrigerators
Mhm.
or something and figure out if
Yeah.
we need a new refrigerator, or like,
Yeah.
so I'll put it somewhere in real
That is
life.
so funny. There was this guy, I don't know where I heard this from. There was this guy who started going to open houses and then writing about the experience. And he was an engineer. So he was really thorough and meticulous and like very clean with his writing. And then people
Yeah.
started approaching him about like, go check out this open house for me. And then they wanted him to be their realtor. And so he ended up like building up he became a realtor and he ended up building up this like massive business because he just went to an open house and like wrote about it as him and his wife were house shopping. So to sink into the fridge is like, that's a legit profession. You could be a personal shopper. And, maybe that's your next career is like personal shopping. I don't mean to put more on your plate. This is supposed to be about not doing that. So my bad. But
Right.
yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm gonna
Have
say
you
I
ever felt?
relate to. Yeah, I'm thinking that it was somebody talking about some famous musician, like they would talk about sort of the experience of coming off stage, and it was
Mhm.
either drinking to like come down or doing coke to like keep it going. And
Mhm.
so that like that process of like downshifting is downshift is really hard for me. Um,
Yeah.
it's really hard. And I love this is probably TMI, but alcoholism runs in my family. I would love to drink every day. Like it would be such an easy, I don't drink right now at all, but it'd be easy. That downshift is the benefit. Like bringing my brain down, just like
Yes.
slowing things down just a tiny little bit. Not to the point of drunkenness, but like just enough to like, shoo, whoa, okay, I can like physiologically like, oh, I'm like relieving some of the weight, whatever the
Mhm.
weight is, just like the going. So downshifting is hard, just period.
Mhm.
So yeah, if I was in this position, I would know what was happening. Like I can see it clearly. And I might do one of two things. So depending on like how great I felt about what was happening, like, man, I can feel so good, I might try to keep it going in the way of like, I'm going to start this new workout program, or I'm going to learn how to crochet, or I'm going to pick French back up, or I'm going to whatever, buy a keyboard and like
Mhm.
start playing the piano again, or who knows, learn coding. I was 4 weeks postpartum and I started a free coding program. Why?
Mhm.
Who knows? Who knows?
Mhm.
Who knows?
Mhm.
And so it might go that direction, or it might go the direction of you're doing that thing again, Tara. Like you're doing that thing where you're just excited about this, but like you've just physically slow yourself down. And so it might be I hike instead. And so it's not like the production of something. It's more like I know if I hike in the forest, in particular, if I'm surrounded by trees, I know I'm gonna like, oh, I can breathe. Okay. It helps
Mm.
me sort of slow down and reground, honestly. Probably stay barefoot also. I really like to be barefoot in grass. Helps me feel alive, feel connected to
Okay.
the earth. And then maybe there's something about just not allowing myself to do that, like more of something until I feel slower in my body, if that makes sense.
Mm. Mhm.
It's like
Mhm.
there are some things I can do. That's
Yeah.
also assuming that I recognize as it's happening, because sometimes I might not recognize. A lot of times I do, but not always. And
Yeah.
then if I was working with somebody, I probably would say the same thing. Like, obviously, would be calling this thing out as like, I think this is what's happening, and then trying to identify the part or the wound or the need or the meaning behind the movement, and trying to help them figure out other ways in which they could potentially bring themselves down or like allow for some discomfort. Maybe not forever, but like sort of paying attention to this discomfort rather than trying to channel it or even like stop it entirely from happening. Because also think
Mhm.
about like it's a whole system disruption. Like it makes sense to me that we would feel uncomfortable with something like that. If you are moving and building and doing something, and then all of a sudden if you took a moving piece and you just like blip, blip, picked it up and dropped it, it's gonna like keep slowly spinning probably until it eventually stops. And so I think, well, it does make sense to me that there's an after effect of something like this, like a major hiring cycle, onboarding two new team members, implementing a new process, like hitting quarterly goals. You're on a high, sure, but also you've just done a lot of movement. Same as if you fucking run on a treadmill. You get off and the whole world is moving around you. It feels like the same thing where you have to just, reorient yourself to what
Mhm.
not being on a treadmill feels like, which maybe
Yeah.
isn't stillness either. Like it might be that your baseline isn't stillness necessarily, but it's slower than the speed that you were just traveling at.
Right. Maybe it's walking instead of running. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Which feels lame
Yeah.
at first. Like, then it's like combating the
Mhm.
like, "Oh god, this is boring." Like, I'm walking, I could be sprinting.
Totally.
Yeah,
Totally. Yeah.
probably
I
sprint.
hear you. I was just talking to my wife about this yesterday, actually. Maybe, or I think we're in the same ballpark where, like I told you, we just got done with this weekend of soccer with my son.
Yeah. Yeah.
He had this big tournament. And I've experienced this with big events like that where there's a long buildup and anticipation and like a lot that goes into, where you
Yeah.
like hit the event and then the few days after there's this huge letdown. I think that's like a
Yeah.
known phenomenon, right?
Yeah.
So it happens for me with like races that I've trained for, or it happened with our wedding for sure a long time
Yeah.
ago. Things like that. And I think that's what you're getting at with this question
Mhm.
is like, hey, you've like made this sprint, you've done the sprint and then everything's good, quote unquote, and like you close
Yeah.
the quarter and then what happens then? It's like
Yeah.
an emptiness or a
Yes.
mourning or a grief or something. And then what do you do to combat that? Or do you sit with it? Do you like cover it up? Do you? Yeah.
We haven't holy shit, we haven't talked about grief, I think, at all in this episode, but I think that that is a major player with any of this. And, like, the space, like, what you just said, I forget how you languaged it, but this notion of, like, you've been doing something and creating, and then there's it like, empty space.
Mm,
It can't be filled right away, like, that's literally
mm,
loss. You've removed something. There's empty space, which is loss. This thing is now gone. And, like,
yeah.
what does it mean to be gone? But also, why can't we grieve things like that? What's wrong with grieving something like even a great things happening? It can't remain great, even if something great has been happening, once it ends, I, you should feel grief. Like, I don't mean that in a shitty way, but you should feel grief. One, that's a testament to how great it is. Two, now there's a loss, and it's not necessarily a loss of identity, but like a loss of a part of you that's been planning and gunning for something and striving and whatever. You hit this benchmark, you hit this goal, and now what? Well, now you grieve that it's done, and then you eventually will set a new one. And yeah, maybe that's obvious. Maybe that's obvious to people who are listening, or maybe that's obvious like from this conversation. But I do wonder if there should be more conversation, even just about grief as maybe like practice owners. I don't mean to make this like group practice owners need to grieve more, but like maybe there's something about like grief isn't everything. Like it's literally everywhere. It's also always really close for me at the surface, like it's right
Mm,
underneath. And so I think there's something about like, oh, fuck yeah, there's grief there too. I forgot about this. Of course there
mhm.
is. But I wonder if like conceptually you have this understanding of what's happening. It actually helps you to deal with the need for that frenetic energy, maybe. For me, it comes out as frenetic, like in that empty space where I'm like frantically trying to fill if I don't catch it. But then the
Mhm.
alternative is like, if I can catch it and I'm like, oh, that's what's happening, then it's like acknowledging and being with that grief as well. Like that's part of the stillness. And
Mhm.
it's Butters. It's you watch some South Park, right? Why do I
Long
think
time.
I think about Butters all the time. I like he's like, we think about from an IFS perspective. I think about one of my parts as like a little Butters. He like walks around like, I guess I can do that. I don't know. How's everyone doing? It's just like real concerned and real anxious and real nervous all the time. But there's the one episode where Wendy Testerberger breaks up with Stan and then he turns total goth and he's just like depressed, and not all goths are depressed, but he like his attire totally changes to like goth emo. And then
Uh-huh.
also he like gets real sad, real sort of morose and sad. And then Butters in the same episode thinks he has a girlfriend at Raisins, which is the equivalent of Hooters in the show. It's South Park is so unhinged. So fucking funny, but so unhinged. And so he has this like quote girlfriend who's actually the server at Raisins. So he goes to see her every day and she's real nice to him. And then somehow he finds out that they're not dating, or maybe they did and they broke up. And Butters goes to like talk to Stan and Stan's all sad and depressed. And Butters is like, yeah, but it's a beautiful kind of sadness. And I'm like, oh my God. Like, I think I cried when I heard him say that because it just was such a, that's exactly it. Why can't it be sad and beautiful at the same time? Why can't it be rich and meaningful and grief laden? Like, they're not mutually exclusive. I would say more often than not, they do and should coexist. And there's beauty in that. That is, I'm just like, that's fucking meaning of life. It's all of it. It's all of it at once. Like, let it be together. Stop shutting it out. Feel your grief when you do awesome shit. Know that it's going to end. And it's okay when it does, because then there will be more awesome shit in your future.
Well
Right?
said.
Thanks. It was a little tangent. My Butters tangent.
There you go. Butters brings it home for us. Yeah.
Yeah, Butters brings. That actually needs to be a catchphrase. I might adopt that as a catchphrase for the podcast. I'm just going to
You
reference
totally
Butters.
should.
Like, Butters brings us home, as always. Oh, man. This has been I hope this has been awesome. For me, this was awesome. I don't know how it was for you, but thanks, man. This was great.
Yeah, yeah. This is Super Bowl. I don't really have these conversations a whole lot. So any opportunity is really meaningful. Thank you.
Yeah. Cool. Thanks, Jeremy. For anybody listening, I will have all of the stuff related to Jeremy in my show notes, so you can find links there. Or if you're on YouTube, in the YouTube description, if you're watching this, it's going to be below in the description or in the show notes. You'll find links to all of the things he does. And if you are listening and you're like, God, this was fantastic, I loved this episode, just share it with somebody. Share it with somebody else you think it might resonate with, another group practice owner, even just another business owner, period. Because I think while we are both group practice owners, the reality is that what we're not talking about is unique to group practice ownership. I think it's something about entrepreneurship and about being a business owner and about, I don't know, the stillness that needs to come with it, as well as the grief and the agitation, the restlessness and the evolution of how we show up and, all of that. So sharing is caring, folks. Share it with somebody that you think needs it. So that's all I got. Thanks for being here. Thank you again, Jeremy, for joining me. It's been great. And
Thanks
everybody
for having me.
else, thanks. Yeah, no problem. I'm probably going to have you back on again at some point because, I just think you're awesome. So for everybody else, have a great day. I will see you next time. Bye.